Welcome to episode 155 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing screenwriter and director John Fallon. He just did a film called The Shelter with Michael Parr. He lives up in Canada and has maintained a solid career. He has more than a half dozen feature film credits. We talk through how he got started and how he's been able to maintain a career for the last decade, all from Canada. So stay tuned for that. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mentioned in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 155. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline and query letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm interviewing writer-director John Fallon. Here is the interview. Welcome, John, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Oh, thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it.
So to start out, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about your writing background. Kind of how did you get started, and maybe bring us back, to childhood up to some of your first early successes in the business.
I basically went to film school first. Then I went for 2 years. Then I went to acting school for 3 years. And when I came out, I started doing the acting rounds. But also on the side, I would work as a script doctor for local production companies. So that eventually started me writing, my own spec scripts. I mean, actually, my first script was written on a typewriter. Which I kind of miss that typewriter now that I think of it. But so, that started off with spec scripts, and which eventually graduated to me being hired to write screenplays.
So how did you get those early, you said you got hired to just come on as a script doctor for local productions. How did you get those jobs? Those seems like just those first steps would be something to accomplish.
That was just by accident, really. I mean, I was at an industry little shindig, and this one company was looking for somebody, and this one person that we knew in common knew that he thought I was a very good writer, so he put us together, and it worked out. And then from that job, my name started going around, and it's a small market where I am. I'm in Montreal, Canada. Okay. So my name started going around from here to there, and I started just script doctoring,
Yeah. And how many spec scripts had you written? Like this guy who introduced you to the other person, he knew you were a good writer. What had you written that he had seen? 4
spec scripts that I had written.
Okay.
So that, that I was shopping around trying to get off the ground. And this gentleman, when he read one of them, which ironically enough was called Knocking on Mickey's Door, which is about 2 guys that go to New York to find Mickey Rourke. It's just it was a weird script. Yeah. So yeah, that's what resulted into that.
So then take us through some of those first, now you're starting to write spec scripts. What did you do to actually facilitate selling those spec scripts?
I didn't go the usual route. I mean, I never had a manager, although I'm looking into it now. I never had an agent. It was always through contacts, just through contacts. I was very much aware that the more people you know, the easier it is for you to eventually, move up within the ranks of the business. And so it was basically like that, through contacts. And I was lucky enough that I founded Arrow in the Head, which is the horror movie section of Jobo.com. So I founded that and operated that site for a very long time, and that gave me a lot of access to producers, distributors, actors, whatnot. So I made a lot of contacts that way as well.
Okay. And tell me more about that site. I will link to it in the show notes. What is the actual URL again?
It's www.arrowinthehead, all in one word, .com.
Arrow in the Head. And what kind of a site is it? Did you review horror movies? How did that help you network with these producers?
Well, yeah, that started in the year 2000. So that's before the internet was what it is at the moment. So we were one of the first big boys to come out. And at the time, the studios didn't really know how to deal with us. So they kind of treated us like rock stars at first anyways. Not anymore. But so people didn't know what to make of us, so you had an easier access. And I did, I'm still behind the site, but more behind the curtains as I have somebody running it for me. But we've been around 15 years, so 15 years you meet a lot of people.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so let's talk about your latest film, The Shelter. Maybe to start out, you can give us a quick pitch or log line for that film.
Sure. The Shelter is about a homeless man called Thomas Jacob, played by Michael Perret, and he comes back to his hometown after 5 years of absence. He's carrying a lot of guilt, a lot of self-loathing on his shoulders, and one night he falls upon, looking for a place to sleep, he falls upon a house with the door open, light shining out, and he figures that he's caught a lucky break. So he goes inside, enjoys the comfort of home, and eventually finds out that the house won't let him leave. And that's pretty much the basic premise. But it doesn't go in the way that, it's not a 1, 2, 3 mainstream horror movie. It's more, it goes in different places than you would think.
Okay. And where did this idea come from?
Well, the seed that sparked The Shelter was basically, I was coming back from a hockey game in the winter, and in winter here in Montreal it's pretty harsh. And there was this gentleman sitting on the ground in the snow begging for change, and I gave him some money, and on my way back home, I felt bad for the guy, like that poor guy, how did he get there? Who is this guy, and where's he going? And I'm like, those are good questions. So I got home, and I wrote those 3 questions down, and I eventually, I think about a script a lot before I start writing it. So I eventually kind of started answering those questions for myself, and that was the seed that would sprout The Shelter.
Okay. And one of the things that struck me about The Shelter is it's incredibly contained. Obviously, one main role is also all in, or a large part in this house. When you started to write the script, how conscious were you that keeping it contained would make it easier to produce, potentially get financing? How much did that kind of play into your overall writing process, or even coming up with the idea?
Oh, 100%. I mean, by the time I got to writing The Shelter, I had written a lot of low budget stuff. And if there's one thing that I've learned if you're going to shoot a low budget film, less locations, the better, because company moves will cost you time and money. And the smaller the cast, the better. So with The Shelter, it was definitely written with a low budget in mind. I knew that it was too outside the box for me to get it off the ground in through the proper channels, the usual suspects. So it had to be a small movie. So it was purposely written with Michael Perret as character of Thomas is pretty much in 98% of the film, and everybody else are kind of peripheral characters.
Yeah. So let's talk about your writing process a little bit, and we can talk specifically sort of about The Shelter, but really just, I would say these are more general kind of screenwriting questions. How much time, you just said you spent a lot of time sort of thinking about your story. What would you actually estimate, like when you open up Final Draft and write the script, how much time does that take, and how much time have you spent prior to that just outlining and thinking about the script?
Usually it takes me 3 months to write a script, like at least a solid first draft, if not second draft. The Shelter was just a first and hopefully a last, because it was a very odd process. I came up with my opening and I had my ending, and it took me 3 years to find everything else. Thinking about it, and some weird mishap. I don't know if you want to hear the story or not, but this weird mishap actually is what unlocked the script. I'll try to make a long story short. I lived in an apartment building in the city on the 4th floor, and I had a flood while I was researching the script. And So I went downstairs and told my landlord I have a flood, a pipe broke, and I have water and stuff floating around, and my personal belongings are ruined. So he's like, okay, we'll send a plumber. So the next day, this little Asian man, a plumber, showed up, dressed up as a plumber. He's here. I'm here to fix the pipes. So I'm like, okay. So he goes to the bathroom to fix the pipes, and I'm at my computer and I'm researching these websites having to do with Christianity, because there's a very strong, iconography in terms of Christian iconography in the film. I wanted to go that way with it. And at some point I feel a presence behind me, and it's this gentleman. And he's standing there. Are you Christian? And I'm like, well, yeah, I was raised Catholic, but this is research for a script that I'm trying to crack, So he just takes a pen and he writes out 3 URLs. Visit these sites. And then he leaves pipe fix and he books out. So I visit the sites, and there was these 3 kind of like underground Christian weird stuff that I couldn't really compute 100% stuff, not a site that you'd see on Google. It was just weird stuff. But through that, I did find something, and I can't even tell you what it is today. I mean, it's a long time ago. I did find something that said, oh, I'm going to go that way. Oh my God. And and then I finished the draft, and I started, finishing the script. The weird thing about the story, other than the fact that it just got script advised by a plumber, is that the next day I woke up with water all over the place again. So I went downstairs to see my landlord, and I told him, your plumber did an awful job. I got water everywhere again. And he told me they never sent him. So I'm like, what do you mean you didn't send a plumber? I go, there was an Asian guy dressed like a plumber in my house yesterday. He's like, looks in his paperwork. No, never sent them. I'm like, call the company. So he called the company, and they're like, no, he's coming tomorrow. So to this day, I have no idea who this guy is.
Wow, that is a creepy story.
Yeah, that was weird.
He actually did go in there and do some plumbing?
Yeah, he did. He did. I mean, I didn't, because, my kitchen was here and my bathroom was here, like on the side. So he went in there, and I went on my desk. Mm-hmm. And I didn't go in to double check if he was doing plumbing or not. I just felt him being behind my shoulder, like, I felt, somebody there. I'm like, oh, shit, yeah, it's this guy. Okay. I know, it was really weird. And that was one of many things during the screenwriting process with the shelter. Just weird stuff kept happening. The shoot was smooth, and post-production, more weird stuff. But whatever you want to talk about, let's go on.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about just in general, what does your writing schedule look like when you get in a good groove, especially maybe when a more typical example, when you write a script in 3 months, what does your writing schedule look like? Are you writing for 6 or 8 hours a day? Do you write for 2 hours in the morning? What does your schedule look like?
Ideally, 5 pages a day.
And how long does that take you?
It depends. On some days you're on fire, and some days, everything you write is garbage. So, and you're not feeling it. So, but for myself anyways, I still try to keep writing anyways, even though what I'm writing is, to me, absolute garbage. And then you revisit it the next day, and, with distance, you're able to say, okay, maybe it wasn't that bad, or maybe there's a good idea here, So, the last script that I wrote, I binge wrote it, because during the post-production on the shelter, there was so many negative things happening that I couldn't write. I had no creativity in me. I couldn't write. And recently, now that the shelter is out, I went and locked myself up in a cabin by a lake, and I wrote hopefully my next film, called Eva, which is a female vigilante flick. And that took me 4 weekends, 3 days, like almost like back to back, no sleep. Yeah. Okay. So it varies, but in everyday life, I try at least 5 pages a day, and first thing in the morning, just get them out of the way, and then I could, focus on other things, producing and other stuff that I have to do. Yeah.
So, how do you know when your script is ready to start showing to people? You have that rough draft, maybe a first draft. How do you know when it's time to start getting feedback and other people's input?
For me, my process is I do a first draft, then I step away from it for maybe like a week, and then I go back to it with fresh eyes, and then I do a second draft, and then usually I take that second draft and send it. I have my trusted sources, people that I've always relied on. Some people that are in the film industry, some people that are like your average people that don't, usually read scripts or don't even, just like fun movies, action movies, whatever. And then I get feedback from them, and then I go back for a third draft, and then usually at the third draft is where I stopped. But like now, for example, Eva, that vigilante film, I started showing it around to interested producers, and they came back with some notes. You know, some of them I agreed with, and I'm actually going to implement in the script. Others I didn't. So we'll see what happens if they come on board or not. Then it's up for debate. So that's usually my process.
Okay. And how do you approach, especially a film like The Shelter? How do you approach the genre requirements? There's probably, like with the main actor, you've got to use him in enough scenes. There's probably certain horror things, something like a horror movie, something scary has to happen every 10 minutes. Just how do you approach those types of things? I mean, you just mentioned an action movie. Like, I know the distributors, the producers are going to say, well, we need an action scene every 10 pages. How do you approach those kinds of sort of structural things in your script?
With The Shelter, I didn't at all. The Shelter is the most, how can I say this? Let's just say, because I'm a producer on it. As a producer, I was very quiet. As an artist or a screenwriter, I was very vocal, and I told the producer to shut up. I just did what I wanted to do, and I didn't think about. I'm being honest here. For The Shelter, I didn't think about the audience. I didn't think about distributors. I didn't think. The only place I thought about distributors was for foreign, so I gave them a tit shot. That's it. Otherwise, I didn't think about them. I didn't care if they thought it was mainstream or not mainstream. I didn't care. I made it for a low budget. It was going to be my directing debut, and I was going to do what I wanted to do, and that's it. Obviously, for other films, other projects, bigger budgets, not my money. It's different. Then you have to adhere to them.
Yeah.
But with The Shelter, it was like, it was all me. So I didn't have to answer to anybody. I only had to answer to me. So, and I didn't care. It was really the purest thing I've ever done. How about that?
Okay. So now, once you were finished with this script, maybe you can talk about some of the first steps you did in terms of raising money, in terms of getting actors on board. Just maybe to walk us through that process. You're done with the script, and now what were your next steps to getting this thing produced?
Well, I went to the AFM and met with some sales company that I know, met new sales companies, and people read the script and wanted nothing to do with it. They're like, it's too weird, it's too out the box, not mainstream enough. You do have mainstream elements, it's not mainstream enough. So I had, with my producer, Donnie Broussard in Louisiana, where we shot the film, he was getting me everything I needed. And it was dependent on me finding enough money for production. But then the end of the year came and I didn't find the money. So I came at a crossroads. And then we had Michael Perret already, he wanted to do it. So I said, okay, so either I put all my life savings and all my credits and finance this movie, and next year I'll be broke, or I'm already broke anyways, but next year I won't have a movie. So which one am I going to do? So I put everything. I said, fuck it. I'm sorry about the language, but yeah. I said, forget it. I put all my money on everything I had, all my visas, my MasterCards, my line of credit, my cash. I financed all of the production, and then when it came down time to post-production, I got my good friend Burge Garabedian of Joe Blow Movie Productions. He came in and financed the post. So that's how The Shelter came about. It's not your standard way of raising financing, and I'll never do that again, by the way. I'll never do that again, but I'm happy that I did. Otherwise it wouldn't be a film.
Yeah. So let's just talk just about 1 minute about getting Michael Perret involved in the production. Were you involved in that at all? And maybe you can talk just a little bit about how you go about getting an actor like him attached to your project.
You see, again, it comes back to people I met Mike through a mutual friend, Eric Red, a writer-director, Eric Red, a while back. And then at some point, we were on the same film called 100 Feet. I played a cop, and Mike played the ghost in Budapest. So we got to hang out and get to know each other. And one thing that struck me about Michael is that he has a lot of presence and a lot of charisma, and you just kind of like the guy. You have to like the guy when you're around him. So when it came down to casting The Shelter, I told my producer, Donnie, okay, let's find a guy like Michael Perret. I need a guy who looks like Michael Perret, the same vibe, because I wrote the script with him in mind, but I never thought I'd get him. Mm-hmm. And finally he told me, well, you know Michael Perret, why don't you send him the script? And I'm like, well, he's busy, you know, he's Michael Perret. I mean, like, send him the script. So I'm like, okay, I sent him the script, and Mike reacted to it. He loved it. And that basically led to him. He was in Montreal, so we met together and kind of discussed everything. And then I went to LA and negotiated with him there, and we made an agreement, and that was it. We had him.
Okay. Perfect. So what else? You had mentioned your action film. Do you have some other things going on? Kind of what's next for you?
Right now, I have 2 movies, $2 to $5 million budgets. One of them is called The Shadowing, which is kind of like Predator with a twist, and the other one is called The Prize, which is Conan the Barbarian meets The Grey with Liam Neeson. But those are big movies. So, I mean, 2 million, you know, minimum to make them. So I knew I needed a 300,000 to 500,000 budget range, which is a very popular production model right now. So I wrote a vigilante film called Eva, having to do with a young girl who was kidnapped and put in the sex trade, and eventually something happens, and when she's older, she gets to get her revenge. And that definitely had to be one of the trickiest scripts to write in terms of balancing. The sex trade is a horrible thing. I mean, the research I did on that, I was horrified. I mean, you think you know stuff, but you know, I didn't know. I know it was bad, but I didn't know the gravity of it, and I didn't know it was so rampant in North America. I thought it was all stuff that happened in Eastern Europe and shit. Pardon, but so it was tricky to make an action film, while at the same time giving the subject matter, treating it in a responsible fashion. But I think I pulled it off. So that one's doing the rounds right now, and I have some people interested. So we'll see.
And I was just at AFM, I guess last week, and one of the things that definitely popped up, you know, low budget action movies definitely seem like something distributors can sell. And I'm curious again, how much did that go into sort of your mindset, knowing you've got to hit this $300,000 to $500,000 budget, you know, as opposed to doing another horror or maybe a thriller? Why did you gravitate towards action?
The horror market right now is, and this is my opinion, a lot of people share it, is oversaturated. It's everybody's making them, you know, and there's so many of them that it's easy to get lost in the shuffle. But to make an action film, and with good action, something that really stand out, demands like directing action's not like directing anything else, you know. So it demands a higher level of quality, I think. So really, in terms of Viva, it was just a story that I've always wanted to tell, and now was the time to tell it. I didn't really think about the market, but while I was at the AFM as well, everybody kept telling me, don't do a horror movie. Don't do a horror movie. The market's oversaturated. Buyers are starting to not want to know anything with them. Just don't do a horror movie. So that did stick with me. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, good to know. So how can people see The Shelter? Do you know the release schedule?
Yeah, it's already right now on VOD. It's on Amazon On Demand. It's on iTunes. It's on YouTube. It's on Time Warner's. I think it's going to wind up on Roku fairly soon.
Okay. So
it's out right now. And the DVD's coming out on January 3, 2017. There's a lot of extras, and I give a director's commentary and kind of connect a couple dots for people if people kind of want to know what I'm trying to say more, as opposed to their perception of what they feel has happened in the film. So.
Okay, perfect. And I just like to wrap up the interviews just by asking the guests how people can kind of follow along and keep up with what you're doing. If you're on Twitter, you can mention your Twitter handle. Facebook, you can mention your Facebook link. Anything you're comfortable sharing, just so people can kind of learn more about you.
I'm on Twitter at John H. Fallon. The H because somebody had taken John Fallon. I'm on Facebook at Facebook Fallon Johnny. And also visit theshelterfilm.com. And give me a second. Let me double check, because sometimes I make mistakes. And The Shelter is also on Facebook at The Shelter Movie.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I will round all that up. And I'll put it in the show notes so people can find those links easily. John, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I wish you a lot of luck with this film, and good luck on your next projects, too.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
You got it. Have a great day.
You too. Bye. A quick plug for the SYS Screenwriting Analysis Service. It's a really economical way to get a high-quality professional evaluation on your screenplay. When you buy our 3-pack, you get evaluations at just $67 per script for feature films and just $55 for teleplays. All the readers have professional experience reading for studios, production companies, contests, and agencies. You can read a short bio on each reader on your website, and you can pick the ones who you think is the best fit for your script. Turnaround time is usually just a few days, but rarely more than a week. The readers will evaluate your script on 6 key factors: concept, characters, structure, marketability, tone, and overall craft, which includes formatting, spelling, and grammar. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend, which should help you roughly understand where your script might rank if you were to submit it to a production company or agency. We can provide an analysis on features or television scripts. We also do proofreading without any analysis. We will also look at a treatment or outline and give you the same analysis on it. So if you're looking to vet some of your project ideas, this is a great way to do it. We will also write your logline and synopsis for you. You can add the logline and synopsis writing service to an analysis, or you can simply purchase it as a standalone product. As a bonus, if your script gets a recommend from a reader, you get a free email and fax blast to my list of industry contacts. This is the exact same blast service I use myself to promote my own scripts, and it's the same service I sell on the website. It's a great way to get your script into the hands of producers who are looking for material. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. In the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing screenwriter and director Paul Tanter. He just did an action film called Kill Ratio. We walk through his early days and how he got his first gig as a screenwriter, and then we talk about how he was able to turn that screenwriting career into a career as a writer and director. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. That's the show. Thank you for listening.